Mortal Kombat is a movie based on the world-famous fighting game franchise and a second attempt at adapting it into a new big-screen film franchise. Directed by Simon McQuoid, this film takes a massive risk by centering it all around a brand new character made just for the movie. That being Cole Young, who is played by Louis Tan, a martial artist, model, and an actor. The question is, does this risk pay off, leading to a new fan favorite for all Mortal Kombat fans out there, or does it anger those who don't want a new character that had never been featured in the games before? The answer to that is purely subjective to the fans in the long run, but for this longtime fan in particular, it left a bad taste in my mouth. I simply don't think featuring a new character as the lead in Mortal Kombat is a good idea, especially when you can use the likes of Liu Kang, champion of Earthrealm. Or what about the man whose family dominated the new timeline, not to mention the 90s with his signature $500 sunglasses, Johnny Cage. Before I rant any further, I'll do what I did in the first place and give this film a fair chance to impress me. I'm Billiam, and here's how I feel about Mortal Kombat 2021. While indeed this film is led by Cole Young, it also features the likes of Sonya Blade, Jax, Kano, Liu Kang, Kung Lao, Raiden, and Scorpion. Basically, there are but a few mortals who know of the Mortal Kombat tournament, but the ones who do are all connected to each other, it turns out. Cole learns of this when he realizes his so-called birthmark is actually the mark of the chosen for the great tournament. Cole is an MMA fighter who's down on his luck, but when he meets Jax and Sonya, they inform him of his connection. Suddenly, he's supposed to be Earthrealm's next best thing. This is hard to buy at first, I know, but later on it'll all make sense, for better or worse. To my surprise, Cole isn't really the Johnny Cage of this film. That honor belongs to Kano, played by Josh Lawson. He is no doubt the MVP of this movie. He finds himself doubting everything about the tournament and ends up being the comic relief on top of it. He is absolutely hilarious here and somehow tops the Kano in the 1995 movie. It's kind of strange when the best character of your Mortal Kombat movie is Kano, but I found myself laughing out loud so many times as Kano talked trash about everyone and everything he deemed to be a joke. And to be honest, I kind of agree with Kano, which is kind of a bad thing if you really think about it. So yes, the film without question takes some alternative steps from the mythos, but when it gets it right, it definitely shows signs of promise. For example, in what is my favorite scene of the movie, it involves the origins of Scorpion and Sub-Zero's rivalry. Then they were known as Hanzo Asashi and Bi-Han. Make no mistake, Bi-Han is as evil as they come. As is how most of the Mortal Kombats go, he's the one to murder the Shirai Ryu as well as Hanzo's entire family. Thus, the rivalry is born. This scene is an absolute treat, showcasing the skills and talent from actors Hiroyuki Sanada as Hanzo Asashi and Joe Taslim as Bi-Han. I give the film lots of credit for letting them speak in their native tongues here as well. Right away we are greeted to some wonderful martial artistry and exposition. While I would have appreciated more time with this, I loved what we got here. More like this in the sequels, please. Beyond that, we get appearances from villains such as Shang Tsung, Mileena, Goro, Reptile, Cabal, and Nitara, if you can believe it. Some are featured plenty, while others are just what I call fatality fodder. For some, that will be a disappointment to hear, but for others, they might just be in it to see nothing but the combat. I happen to be someone who cares about this story, someone who's not always in it for the fighting game's satisfaction. I think these characters deserve more than what these adaptations give them sometimes, and to me this is such a downer. You could argue that characters like Reptile are always jobbers in these games, but could you say the same about Mileena, or even Cabal? On a more positive note, the film absolutely delivers on the fatalities, the action, and the special effects. Fans will be absolutely delighted to see some classic fatalities such as Kano's heart rip or Liu Kang's flaming dragon. Yet the problem lies with some popular review sites saying this film is mostly for the fans. In my eyes, that is actually where they are wrong. This film falters when it comes to explaining the mythos of all these characters. With all that was thrown in, I think this film could have used an extra half hour or more to develop the characters such as Melina, Liu Kang, Kung Lao, Cabal, and even the tournament leaders themselves, Raiden and Shang Tsung. A couple characters who I was kind of disappointed in. I found that the original versions of these characters in the 1995 movie were much better. Overall, I think a 2.5 hour length film would have been much better for a movie with so many characters that seem to have all these backstories that are kind of implied, even if they seem to be nothing more than just tournament combatants or fatality fodder, as I said before. What's puzzling is that usually Mortal Kombat is a tournament, and yet none of these fights were handpicked from Shang Tsung or even take place on his island. While done before, yes, sometimes if it ain't broke, you just don't fix it. Most fights are simply there because Shang Tsung doesn't want to play fair, which is odd because he seems so confident that Outworld will win this tournament no matter what. Kinda lazy, right? For fans of the poster boys, Scorpion and Sub-Zero, you'll have absolutely nothing to worry about here. You will absolutely love the fights they have and the powers on display. But on the other hand, you might also have hoped there would be more Scorpion than what we got. Needless to say, what was delivered here was actually pretty darn awesome, one of the highlights of this movie. I'll take nothing away from the powers on display here. They nailed both of them, and I don't agree with everything about the story presented for Scorpion, but we'll talk about that later. To sum it up, this film felt a bit rushed, explained the origins of the characters and their powers in a dissatisfactory manner, and made some really disappointing decisions on how they handled Cole's overall story and how it connects to everything. They nailed the costume design and the over-the-top violence, no doubt, but as a longtime Mortal Kombat fan, I was left a bit underwhelmed. While I'm excited to see where we go from here with all these sequel plans, it pains me to say that this film isn't completely flawless, but rather a film that has its flaws, but manages to deliver some fun in the process. Let's not get that wrong. Mortal Kombat is fun at times, but it's not exactly flawless. Now that the basic review is done, it's time to warn everybody about spoilers, because it's time to roll up those sleeves and break down everything in a no-holds-barred spoiler-filled discussion. And here we go. So, Cole is actually a descendant of one Hanzo Hasashi. To me, this is absolutely disappointing. It's not what I would have wanted from Cole. I would have wanted him to at least stand on his own instead of be someone who builds on a character that already exists within the mythos. And we already have stories about people who are connected with Scorpion, such as Takeda from MKX. So why couldn't we do that? And then you could have characters like Kenshi in there too if you're going to introduce him. So it just kind of puzzles me why they would do this. It's kind of boring and kind of predictable that they would go with a connection to the most popular character in the gaming franchise. I mean, dang it. While I didn't have much hopes for Cole, this was pretty disappointing to hear. How about that lack of Shirai Ryu and Lin Kuei throughout the movie, even though they're mentioned so much? And in fact, while we're at it, no Black Dragon, no Special Forces, just more mentions. Something that Mortal Kombat's awesome for is all these clans and all these groups that are within the lore. And yet, all we get are mentions. If they do, of course, show these clans and these groups in the sequels, fine. But why even bother mentioning them if we're never going to do that ever? So, stuff like that just kind of gets to me. I would have at least liked to see the Shirai Ryu when Bihan is invading Scorpion's temple. Why couldn't we see the Lin Kuei and Bihan take over and decimate everybody? That would have been a really cool thing. I would see a whole movie based on that, in fact. And then you got Sonya being kind of a conspiracy theorist with the Mortal Kombat tournament in general. I mean, really. She had all these posters and writings on the wall about Mortal Kombat. She seemed crazy. Kano's all like, what? what have you been doing? I mean, sure, we fight and all that stuff, but you expect me to believe all this stuff when you're just kind of posting it all over your wall? Seems kind of crazy. It seemed like Kano was the only one I could really relate to in all this. It's real funny. But yeah, it's just kind of weird that Sonya was almost like the bridge to Mortal Kombat through the real world. A bit of an odd choice, but I guess it was kind of amusing. And while we're on about Cole and stuff, how about the fact that he can't win any of his fights for like half the movie, including MMA fights, which are, mortals, I guess. And then he can't even train with anybody and doesn't even discover his powers, which is another thing. These birthmarks, or marks that people have, not birthmarks, apparently give people powers through their inner arcana. And apparently if you defeat somebody while they have this mark, suddenly you get powers. I mean, somehow Jax, who got his arms ripped off brutally by Sub-Zero, by the way, gets his arms later on from the temple, and they're like these baby arms. They're so hilarious. And then out of nowhere, he just suddenly grows bigger arms through powers. Like, really? That's cheesy, man. I mean, first that, and then you got Kano not even having his cyborg eye. What the heck? Just a laser eye. That's it. The lasers come from his eye, not from some implant or anything. All this stuff just kind of grinds my gears, Melina is in this film, and yet no katana? What? Why would they do that? It doesn't make any sense. It's like Batman without the Joker. How do you have Melina but not katana? And vice versa. You gotta have these characters be connected to each other. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, if they do in the sequel, okay. But the fact that they hardly even mentioned it at all, that's disappointing. I think Melina would have at least mentioned it once or twice, maybe, to Shang Tsung. I guess when they have Shao Kahn, maybe they can do something there, but it just seems again like this film was just leading to a sequel. Like, everything was sequel bait here. It's just not how I'd like to go about things. Like, you gotta have something good in the get-go in order to get everybody invested. And sure, it's gonna sell well. It's Mortal Kombat we're talking about here. But if you're gonna make a movie about Mortal Kombat with all this lore to work with, why are you waiting until the sequels? You gotta do it now. Raiden just not getting involved at all. Letting people like Kung Lao die. Like, what the heck? I can't save everybody, but sure I could save Cole Young and Liu Kang. Well, who cares about that Kung Lao guy? Let's just watch him get his soul sucked just for the purpose of Shang Tsung sucking somebody's soul. As Cabal says, that man's about to get his soul sucked. Like, why was Cabal such a comedian? He was just almost as funny as Kano. Like, there's a line where Natara comes into the scene, and then he's like, that screech, such a turnoff. And I'm like, what movie am I watching again? And of course, no Johnny Cage in a Mortal Kombat movie. What? Okay, I get you're gonna have him in the sequel, but again, he would have been a perfect character for the audience to have as a surrogate character. Instead, we get that to not Cole, Kano. This is an odd choice. Kano sort of acted as the surrogate character for the audience who was discovering everything. And instead of having it be Johnny Cage, who makes perfect sense in this lore, you kind of make Kano somebody who doesn't believe in any of it, jokes about it and stuff. Just a bit odd. I mean, I would have had Johnny Cage. But I guess that's something later for the sequel. Everyone's power is explained in the worst way, Arcana. Like, do we need to explain the powers of Mortal Kombat? Because I don't think so. I think they're cool enough on their own, Was there any need to explain why Sub-Zero could manipulate ice, or why Liu Kang could shoot fireballs? No. It's just cool, alright? We played these arcade games back in the day without any real explanation from anything, and we didn't care. But Hollywood's like, we gotta explain everything. So, yeah, they get these powers by, yeah, that guy defeated somebody with a tattoo. That's pretty cool, right? Yeah, I guess. Uh, the tournament is non-existent, as I said before, and Shang Tsung just breaks the rules for no reason, even though they had beaten Earthrealm 9 times in a row. It's just like, couldn't you wait just one more time before you did this stuff? I mean, if you're gonna do that, wouldn't you realize that a guy like Raiden might actually, clap back at you and break the rules himself a little bit? It's not a good plan. Not a good plan. They could have easily had more fighters in there too. The writing was all over the place, and the plot was really rushed in the final act of the movie. Essentially, instead of having a tournament, they just kind of had a part where Cole's like, hey, you go fight him, you go fight her, and all this stuff, which, don't get me wrong, those were awesome scenes, but they were too fast. These fight scenes were kind of shaky. I couldn't tell what was going on with the camera, and there just wasn't much of a fight, like, especially Jax and Reiko. It was like, oh yeah, I forgot all about Reiko, who he's just in the movie, just kind of be there and die. But at least we got to see that cool fatality with Kung Lao, right, where he faces Nitara. The buzzsaw, I love that thing. But again, why did they not take any time to have a Mortal Kombat tournament in a Mortal Kombat movie based on the Mortal Kombat tournament video game? Kinda sus. And what's the point of all these fatalities that I mentioned if they're just going to say, oh, well, who cares? This character's coming back. This character's not dead yet. See, look at my powers. I'm Shang Tsung. I can bring them all back. So they're kind of just ripping off the Revenant stuff this early. It's just like, well, why are we doing that if we haven't even done a tournament yet? It just seems like they're rushing it a little bit again, even with the sequel. Like, I guess sequel's gonna be a MKX type of thing with the Revenants. Alright, I guess, but I would have rather seen more characters first, and Katana should have been introduced, but, well, maybe that's me being a broken record, but these are essential things, These are things that Mortal Kombat movies should do in 2021, but instead we're just kind of rushing a movie. Like, it's just too short. Like, I know the first Mortal Kombat movie was short and didn't exactly follow the lore that great, but that was 1995. They didn't have that much to work with at the time. There's really no excuse here. There's so many things they could do with Mortal Kombat, and then they just make a movie that's I don't think it's even 2 hours, and it really showed, because that was rushed. Just not what I was hoping for. Cole was just completely useless and really a mute throughout the movie. Didn't even talk much. Like where was he during all of it? Like, he was just kind of sitting there. And he had these visions of Scorpion, which obviously I was just sitting there freaking out because I'm like, no, he's going to be connected to Scorpion. And next thing you know, he is. But he doesn't even tell anybody about these visions. He just says, oh yeah, everything's fine, man. And then he just goes back to doing nothing. It's just like, oh man. If he's connected to Scorpion, you know what that means. They're going to have the fight with Scorpion versus Sub-Zero. And look, guess what? Cole Young's going to be involved, so we don't get the classic one-on-one. We got to get a 1v2. And it's just like with every good versus movie, there's always got to be outside interference somehow. Especially Freddy versus Jason. All those stupid those stupid teenagers ruining everything. So, overall, I enjoyed the Mortal Kombat movie a little bit for what it was, But I guess I had higher expectations when the director kept saying all these things, making it seem like he knew what he was talking about. It just kind of left me feeling disappointed, a little empty, and made me a little worried for the sequel. I think the writing needs a little tweaking. Maybe get some new writers in there. I heard somebody who worked on Wonder Woman 84 was signed on for this, and if you saw that movie, then you know what I'm talking about. Kinda sloppy. Yep. But still, a Mortal Kombat movie in 2021. It's really awesome to see regardless of how it turned out. So thanks everyone for watching. I really appreciate you sticking around for this one, especially if you watched till the end. I appreciate you so much. I really appreciate it if you like the video, share it with your friends please, and hit that sub button for more content just like this. Comment down below your thoughts on the movie, whether you agree with me, disagree with me, think I'm repeating stuff over and over, or you think I'm just a hater. I mean, I've been a Mortal Kombat fan since Armageddon, so it just kind of bothers me when things aren't what they should be, you know. I know it's just a fighting game series at the end of the day, but I think it has a great story, don't you? But yeah, anyways, have an excellent evening, folks.
Test your might. Mortal Kombat. Wah, 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 wah. Wah 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 wah